Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching VATV tonight. Thank you for coming and watching with us. VATV is the voice of Vietnamese Americans of Greater Boston and is also hosted by VATAID, the Vietnamese American Initiative for Development. And today we're having a very special topic of Tet, our Lunar New Year, which is coming up in a couple of days. And I have the honor of being here with Dr. Thanh Tran, who's going to talk more with us about the traditions, about why we celebrate Tet, and what does Tet means to not only Vietnamese immigrants, but also second generation Vietnamese Americans. And so I just wanted to start with, what is Tet and what is Lunar New Year?
Good evening, everyone, and chào cô,
Yeah.
and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Tet, or the Vietnamese New Year, they say Chinese New Year, Korean New Year, Japanese New Year. Those countries that was influenced by the Chinese culture,
Right.
Celebrate the New Year. But the people who celebrate the Chinese and Vietnamese, I think those are two nations now, or two countries now.
Right.
They celebrate more than the other community or country. So Tet is a concept, a cultural concept.
Right.
And when the Chinese, for Vietnamese, when the Chinese invaded Vietnam 1,000 years ago, they brought the Chinese culture
Right.
Into Vietnam. And the Vietnamese learned the Chinese culture and they transform it to make it a unique
Right.
ceremony for the Vietnamese community, Vietnamese people. So Tet, when I say this a cultural concept, I mean that people can express Tet or celebrate Tet differently, from region to region,
Right.
from family to family, from community to community.
Right.
But there are some key elements of Tet on the New Year Day. And the day is similar to many other major holidays in other culture,
Right.
like in America, USA, Christmas, Thanksgiving, for example, the things that people do to prepare
Right.
for Christmas, to
Right.
prepare for Thanksgiving. And the Vietnamese people do the same thing. For example, before the New Year Day arrive, people clean up their house.
Right.
for
A big
example.
cleanup.
Right. But the cleaning here is not just to prepare the house for the new year. The cleaning here also means that you want to get rid of all of the bad things.
Right,
Things that,
symbolically.
right. To prepare to receive the New Year's with good news,
Right.
with good fortune, and so on. Tet also has some spiritual meaning in that. The day that people reconnect with the dead, with the deceased,
Right.
with the ancestor, and to reconnect with families, reconnect with the community.
Right.
So for the Vietnamese people, especially the Buddhist Vietnamese, they still keep a lot of tradition in terms of worshiping ancestor in the New Year Day.
Right.
But for the community like the Catholic Vietnamese community, like my own community, I'm a Catholic. So a lot of the traditions about the New Year's has been disappeared. One of the things is that one of the major problems is that when the missionary, the Western missionary came to Vietnam,
Right.
I think they get rid of all of the tradition. They think it's not religion, tradition.
Right.
So
It's really
for a
either
couple
or.
hundred years, Vietnamese Catholic forget about how to celebrate New Year's. We're setting up a ancestor altar in the family, for example, and celebrate other activities, preparing like the Buddhist family. So a lot of Vietnamese Catholic don't celebrate Tet as what you read in books or in newspaper or in magazine about the Vietnamese date.
So Lunar New Year means a lot of things to a Vietnamese family, right? So it's gathering of family, a lot of food, a lot of fruits, right? It's also a connection with the ancestors.
That's right.
So the first day, if you do this, right, you welcome the ancestors back home, you reconnect with them, and you celebrate that in 3 days. And on the third day, you send them off.
Well, that's in the book, That's in the book. How you read an article discussing about what is the Vietnamese New Year's or Tết is. But in reality, it varies from community to community, from family to family.
Yeah.
Beside, the spiritual meaning of Tết and the social meaning of Tết, people celebrate, like many other culture, celebrate a holiday with food, and friends and family.
Right.
So in the Vietnamese New Year Day, there's a couple of dishes that you have to have.
Right.
Even though you probably never like it. Like bánh chưng, for example.
No, I love it. Although my mom thinks I don't. Yeah, I love that.
But those the dish you only eat 1 or twice a year.
Right, it's very special.
Right, yeah. So for your family, like bánh chưng is the sweet rice cake, wrapped it in banana leaves and filling with pork fat and mung beans, and but in the old day, before the industrialized Vietnam, people have to prepare bánh chưng at home.
Right.
Right now, it's commercialized. You can buy bánh chưng at a grocery, a food store.
Right, it's mass produced.
So it no longer a cultural activity that people looking forward to prepare bánh chưng for the new year. So that activity often bring family together, to spend hours to prepare for bánh chưng.
It's a laborious task.
Right. So now those kinds of activities no longer exist in many families, in many communities. In my own family, for example. So we're missing those traditional activities of the New Year.
So in 2016. That looks very different, right? Even that in Vietnam and that here in Boston looks very different.
Absolutely. People, I imagine that people in Hanoi or Saigon or other part of Vietnam, especially in the urban area, they go out and buy the bánh chưng, for example, because it takes a lot of time to prepare for bánh chưng. But there's also other dishes that people eat during the holidays. The same thing, as I said, in many cultures. When you celebrate a major holiday, food is important.
Yeah. So what does that mean to your family, and how does your family celebrate it?
That means to my family, I grew up in a rural Catholic community, village in Vietnam during the war. So a lot of things that you read about, like they prepare at the New Year Eve, for example, firecracker in the midnight and so on. Those did never happen in my life because during the war, you are forbidden to do those things.
Right, that's not true.
And then our family is a Catholic family. So my grandparents, my parents, abandoned a lot of the traditional activities or celebrations of the Vietnamese New Year. So what we did, just went to church. So same thing as a mass, like a Thanksgiving mass or a Christmas mass, that's a New Year mass. Same thing here. Right now, for example, in the USA, I only feel Tết on New Year's at the community, with the community, at the church, for example. Not in my family. It's difficult to celebrate the New Year's, and everybody's busy. Kid is off for college, for example, and you have schedule working. Your wife and husband working a different shift, for example. So Tết has been transformed into a major social event, community event for Vietnamese American or Vietnamese overseas.
Right.
So because it's difficult for people to celebrate Tết within their own family, so they can only feel the feelings of Tết or the spirit of Tết when they participate in a ceremony at the temple, Buddhist temple, for example, at a major Tết event, like in Boston last weekend. The Vietnamese community has a major celebration in Randolph.
Right, in Lombardo's.
So that's how people feel Tết.
Right.
Besides that, at home, it's difficult. Difficult to
with the schedule, with people's different understanding to thought.
So how has your family been celebrating Tết?
Yeah, so I was born here, and I'm just remembering our Thanksgiving conversation. So my family does not celebrate any American holidays. So when everyone's really excited for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, I feel really left out, right? Like I just get a day off. And so that means a lot to me.
That's good.
Because that is like the one event my family goes all out. So what I mean by that is that they have all their fruits, they cook all the food, they clean the altars. So my family does all that. Right, they welcome the ancestor and they follow traditional stories. And I love the food during that time, right? Because as you mentioned, you only get it during that time.
That's right.
And then also as a young person, you get Lisi, right? A red envelope. And so that's always a special treat, right? To like buy junk food or whatever. But I remember it was just a special time because, my family owns it. My family celebrates it. And
that's good.
I feel like we're celebrating.
And I guess that you're not Catholic.
No. So my mom.
That's the good thing.
So my mom's a practicing Buddhist, and so she follows those traditions. And one thing as I'm getting older is that I need to start paying attention to those traditions. I've just been reliant on my mom doing them, and I think things can get lost when you're not paying attention. So as I mentioned, my mom cooked a lot, and so we would eat it for days, right?
So what does she cook?
So she cooks a lot of vegetarian dishes to offer to like the gods and to the ancestors. She'll buy different types of meat like roast pork or steamed duck or steamed chicken. And there's just a lot of fruits, so like tangerines, pomelo, grapefruit, apples, and all that.
So what kinds of fruits that your mom used to offer to the ancestor? The fruit baskets?
She doesn't buy fruit baskets. I think that's a little bit more expensive. So she'll buy a whole bunch of different ones.
So what kinds of fruit does she put in?
I remember like oranges, there's grapefruit, maybe persimmons, and there's just a whole bunch. And I just know that we're eat for days. So like we'll complain. We're like, we're still eating Butts food. And so actually in recent years, she like cut down a lot. And we're like, where's the festivities? And like you said, with schedules, not that my two siblings are away to college, it's just me and my mom. So it's like more scaled down. And I agree with you, I think it's such an important event, but it's so different, right? My mom talks a lot about back in Vietnam, it's such a big deal. You are excited for Tết, right? You go outside, you hang out with your friends, there are firecrackers. Everywhere is really festive. But here in the US, it's very much isolated. Right, you either go to Hoi Châu at Lombardo's, right?
That's right.
And then you just celebrate at home. It's not like a month-long or 3-day-long celebration. And so my mom gets she's very nostalgic around that. And all I can do is just listen, and I wish I was there.
Because it's an important event. Like if you read a newspaper in Vietnam or even in China, everybody hurry to get home.
Right.
Especially migrant who migrate from the rural area to the city.
Right.
They have to go home.
Right. That's
and
family
it's
time.
difficult to get a bus ticket, an airplane ticket to get home on time for Tết. So this still has a very special meaning for the people who still live in Vietnam.
Right.
And for people who live outside of Vietnam. But those who live outside of Vietnam, my observation is that Tết become a major community event because people can, as I said, only when you participate in the community event, you feel that Tết you
Right.
feel safe, you know.
Right.
If you go home, nothing around you.
Right.
The environment is not, and not you don't see anything safe in the environment, in a community around you. So
Right.
at the church or at the temple
Right.
or at some convention center, people hire to do a major New Year event.
Yeah. So it comes with feeling not only food and also the
Right,
traditions, but
right,
really
right.
people gathering and really like holding on to this.
So you're talking about the altar, the ancestor altar and your
Right.
family. So what does your mom, what kinds of gifts that your mom prepare to offer to the ancestor?
Good question. It's been a long time since I've observed.
Yeah.
But there are offerings around money.
Yeah.
I remember different sorts of paper that she'll burn. So I remember like, so there would be paper like houses or like maybe shoes. It's symbolic, right? The idea is you burn it, and so then our ancestor in whatever realm they're in, they'll receive it as a gift. And I remember that happening. And definitely paper money. Again, that's burned and symbolically being offered to our ancestors.
Your mom was Chinese, right? Chinese Vietnamese. So does your family prepare dumpling?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah, so my mom is very Vietnamese in that way. She was born
Okay.
and raised in Vietnam,
Okay.
and so there's no dumplings. She grew up in Saigon, so I don't think she actually made the traditional bánh chưng or bánh tét by herself.
Right.
So we've always like had bought it.
Okay. So you see, I asked you the question to illustrate that even though Tate originated, could be from China, right? But when it came to Vietnam, people Vietnamized Tate,
Right.
make it become a unique Vietnamese holiday.
Right.
And there's the food too. I look into, I think Chinese during New Year, they eat different kinds of food
Exactly,
than the
we do.
Vietnamese.
Absolutely. Maybe the only Chinese influence thing that I see in my home is that my mom changed the red paper that she'll put in the houses, in the house, like at our entrance, and in the symbolic like luck and like good fortune. And I think that has to do with her Chinese ethnic identity. But you're right in terms of, you know, different countries, they influence each other, and different countries really like make it their own, right? This idea of polyculturalism.
So even when I grew up in Vietnam as a child, the rural area, a lot of things that people in my village did is completely different than people in the city.
Yeah.
And especially in a Vietnamese rural Catholic community, completely different than my friends who live a few blocks, in a Buddhist community. They celebrate Tate completely different than the Vietnamese Catholic. So, but the key concept, as I said, is that the day that we reconnect with our ancestor, the dad of the family, going back to our family, sharing. It's another way to share, to prepare for new things to come in the new year, and then to reconnect with people in the community. So in the old day, the New Year Day is within the immediate family. You don't go out, stay home with your grandparent and your parent. And in the second day, you then go visit your relatives. And the third day, I go visit your friends and other people in the community. If you, let's say, if you're a young couple in Vietnam and you just get married, your husband, the first day, the New Year, he had to bring you to see his parents first, and then the second day.
See the rest of the family.
Your family.
My family, okay.
Second day, your family, and the third day is a
like
relative.
Right.
So there's a hierarchy of greetings during your New Year Day.
So on my ride here with Jungia, our VATV producer, one thing he mentioned that really struck me was that this honoring of ancestors and remembering our ancestors is really important, right? So always bringing them in and just remembering that they're with us. And also we stand on their shoulders in order for us to be here.
That's
so
true.
So this constant, like, appreciation and remembrance is really important. So there's that connection, and then, as you mentioned, connection to the entire community.
Right.
So that is such a special time.
Yes.
Because we're connecting with people in different realms, and also people who are here or who had passed, and that people is the center of it, right? And everything else, food, the traditions and the fruits, right, is just part of it, and at the heart of it, it's people.
True, yeah. And then for the Vietnamese family, family member does not mean that they're living. But family members include the dad. So you have to have time for honor people together. Right. The dad and the living together. And the New Year Day is the day that people, bring back the memories of the dad, to honor the dad, grandparents or great-grandparents or uncles and so on.
Right, right. So we do have an event that's coming up. Do you want to share about the MFA where you're going to be talking?
Oh,
right?
We have, you know more about that, right?
Okay.
I'm going to participate in that.
So on February 6th at the Museum of Fine Arts, there's going to be a Lunar New Year celebration. So this is honoring the ways in which Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese traditions will be participating. So that's happening. And then also on February 20th, on a Saturday at VATV, we're going to have our own celebration.
Oh, okay.
So it's really exciting, right? Lombardo's happened with Hoi Jiao, and then MFA is happening, and then VATV is happening.
So for the Vietnamese people who don't feel safe at home, my suggestion is that go to church, go to the temple, go to the event in the community so that they can reconnect with their own culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you did it, right? Did you go to the...
I did. Yeah. I heard it was really busy, and a lot of people showed up.
Yeah, that's good. I saw a good turnout.
Yeah, a huge turnout. Yeah, and that just goes to show how important that is, right?
In my own Catholic community in Randolph, we're going to have the big New Year celebration this coming Sunday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you come,
Yeah. So what are some highlights from the
Well, I say something, and I don't think that some of the Vietnamese Catholic, if they following the program, they probably get mad at me. Because unlike the Buddhists, they know how to celebrate the New Year.
And
traditionally.
Like you said, there's many different ways of celebrating.
Right. So
there's no one real way.
In the Catholic, Vietnamese Catholic Church, it's a lot of parishes. They begin to create some ceremony to honor the ancestor. Right. But it's still not there yet. So I wish that in the Vietnamese Catholic Mass during a New Year Day, the entire community set some time to really, reconnect with the ancestor. Besides, of course, we come to church to worship God, but at the same time, this is an important time for the community to honor and to commemorate the dad.
Right.
So I'm still looking for a Catholic church, a Vietnamese Catholic church, that really know how to celebrate the Vietnamese New Year's within the church.
Right. Yeah, that's super important. Yeah. Especially that's the main tenet of that celebration.
So I don't know about in Vietnam, but in the USA, we have a lot of younger Vietnamese priests in the community, and most of them, like even though I'm somewhat older than them, we don't have a lot of knowledge about the tradition of the New Year. So we need to begin to recreate the tradition, make it to become a Vietnamese American tradition, how to celebrate the Vietnamese American New Year.
Right.
It has to be different than the Vietnamese New Year.
Right. Right. That one that we've been here for 40 years, right? And now
it's our job.
Right.
Our job to bring the beauty of the Vietnamese culture to make this country a better place for everybody.
Yeah. And leaving a lot of room for many
That's
different
right.
ways of celebrating.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on people's capacity and people's availability, and then access to traditions.
So when will your family celebrate the New Year?
I think we're gonna start this Sunday.
Okay.
And they're gonna start at midnight. And I think my mom's going to light incense and like all that. It'll be me and my mom.
That's good to hear that.
Yeah.
Good to hear
And
that.
I'm super excited for food.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. Can you share a little bit about the Vietnamese red envelopes? So I heard that you have to be married in order to give it out.
Yeah,
Is that true?
That's the Chinese influence.
Okay.
The Chinese influence.
Right.
In my entire life, as I said, in Vietnam, I never get a red envelope. Those are city folk.
Okay.
So it's a tradition.
Okay.
But it's not a tradition for everybody.
Right.
So it's like, they say it's a lucky money.
Right.
You're not supposed to use it. Just keep it.
Right, savings. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Learned so much, and there's so much in just this celebration. Thank you so much for viewing, and on to our second segment.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.